Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Lead with Giants TV. My guest today is Dr. Steve Bro, and he is the author of the book Leading the Way Up to Mount Olympus: How Acts of Leadership Help People Become Successful. Steve, welcome to our show.
Hey, good afternoon and good morning here from Arizona. Glad to be here.
All right. And also joining me, Dan Forbes, the founder of Lead with Giants Community, and Liz Tinselli. Guys, please say hello to everybody.
Go ahead, Liz. You first. Ladies first.
If I can unmute myself. Good morning, everybody. Glad to be here with you.
Hi, Liz.
Am I muted?
No,
I don't think
think
so.
you were
Okay.
blabbing.
Great. I was blabbing. Hi, everybody. Dan Forbes, hanging out from Austin, Texas. Great to be here.
Great to have you guys. It looks like it's sunny everywhere and warm, so I kind of like that. You know, it's kind of cooling off here in Texas for a little bit. But in case anybody who hasn't seen the book, which I highly recommend, this is the book, and special words of encouragement from Steve Bro inside for me, but it's I loved every chapter, and you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere else, Steve Bro, that they can find your book anywhere?
Well, yes, it's also available on Kindle, which is, of course, Amazon, but it is available as an ebook.
Awesome. Easy enough. Well, Steve deserves a nice introduction for all the hard work and things that he does in the community and other in the space of leadership. So let me take a few seconds and introduce Steve Bro for some of you who don't know him. If you are in the Lead with Giants community, you obviously do know him because he's taking a part in what we do every day, so we really appreciate his time and effort. But let me say a couple things about Steve. Dr. Steve Bro is a leadership coach and university professor who writes about people changing their lives at work. He was born in Southern California, moving to Arizona in the early 1990s. He operated a family business for 30 years and started a charter school organization in the mid-1990s. He has been very active in Toastmasters International, which values excellence in speaking, thinking, and leading. In 2012, Steve published Leaders in Transition, which asked the question, how do people change careers and become a leader in the process? Steve teaches organizational behavior and leadership courses with the University of Phoenix and Grand Canyon University. And so great stuff. I know you teach, you leave the leadership, walk the talk, so we appreciate having you here to talk about some leadership ideas and add value to our audience.
Thank you, Tal. Well, I feel like I'm among peers, people who value the transformative relationship of leadership. I see you do the same thing in your work and in building a community not only dedicated to leadership, but also the values of customer service, and how to make a transformative organization that cares about its customer.
Yes, that's very important. And let's talk about some of your ideas in the book. And one kind of a provocative question, but I know you answer it in the book for our audience, is really important to establish that. Is it important to be a leader to be successful? And the reason I ask this is because maybe some of my friends or colleagues or our peers, they seem to be successful in what they do, but they're not necessarily great leaders. Can you talk about that?
I'd be glad to. Well, that's a question I don't think I've answered with the book. Can you be successful without being a leader? Several of my respondents questioned me on that fact. Now, to back up a bit, I interviewed 35 people who are successful in what they do and have used leadership skills to get there. And most of them agreed with the idea that leadership helps you on the journey to becoming successful. A couple of people weren't so sure. I believe that leadership is part of the DNA for successful people. We're interested in changing people's lives. We're interested in strengthening the people around us, and we're interested in making a contribution to society. Well, in business, in the arts, in government, you want to do all those things. So I think leadership is an excellent match for anyone who is looking to be successful at what they do. And as I started, I became very clear I wanted to talk about success is not just a matter of having a big bank account. There are many people I've talked to over the years who have big bank accounts, and they feel defeated in a sense. They want something more. They realize their life is not sufficient. Leadership is a channel for helping to create the world around you to bring value and meaning to other people, and by doing so, to yourself.
Hmm. It's a very interesting definition of leadership. It's really sometimes just a small acts of kindness or contribution or service of others. It doesn't have to be the CEO or the title of a president or any of that stuff. It's just acting in the best interest of others and serving others. And it could be very, something that I did for my family last night. Just cooking dinner for them may not necessarily be leadership, but it's just being a kind servant person that helps people, right?
When you strengthen a community, and if that community is as small as your family, you are creating an active leadership. You are helping people feel more connected to what you're doing together. Now, it may start with your family. It may expand to a smaller work group. I believe there are leaders around us who don't necessarily wear a title. I believe people can be a leader, and they're perhaps quiet about it. They don't need to receive a lot of recognition. Some people like to have recognition. I like to have recognition. But there are many people who are effective in creating positive change around them who take a back seat and don't necessarily want their name in first place when something good is happening. So leaders can be quiet. You can be a leader who is working with another leader in a follower position and contribute a great deal to what's happening. We often look to the President of the United States as a leader in one way or another. We often don't pay attention to the person who's serving as chief of staff, who is in a support position to the president, but is in a very powerful position of government in helping to make the president's mission happen. And I'm speaking not politically. I mean, we can all think of presidents we like and don't like, but if you look at the office of the president, the chief of staff position doesn't get a lot of credit for making a difference in the country, and yet this is a person that coordinates the office of the president with the legislative and the judicial branch, as well as the commercial sector.
We're talking about two words here that have so many definitions, and the two words are leadership and success. So if you ask a dozen people what is success, you can very easily get a dozen different answers. And of course, we know with leadership, how many definitions are there of leadership. So this is, it's really interesting to be talking about this terminology.
Well, I think that also, if I can, part of our community, as we speak about community, we're learning about leadership, maybe not necessarily in the way of action leadership, but you learn from other people about their view. If we're sharing 4 different views about leadership and you have an open mind, you can learn from another person who went through the experience of different leadership acts and so forth and so on, which, Steve, that's what you've done really with your book, is interviewing 35 people from different industries, different professions, and you kind of get a little different perspective depending on what they do, right, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I talk to nonprofit leaders as well as a physician, a dentist, public speakers, people who help people make money for their own in financial and financial services. So yes, people come to the role of becoming successful with a different idea of what success is all about. It's not just about doing something for oneself. I found that for many people, being successful is being able to identify, how can I make the world a better place today? One man I talked to, Bob Barnhill, he's an attorney. He's out of Texas, actually. He's an attorney, he's an accountant, he's a public speaker. But as I began my interview with him, he told me, I don't count my day successful unless I say I helped someone else today. So I think we can take that attitude of saying, I become successful as I help other people achieve what they need.
And I know one person who's actually working on that right now is Liz Stinsella. She's getting into the leadership space, doing some speaking engagement and some consulting in the area of leadership and success. So Liz, what's your take on some of the ideas that Steve is presenting and inspiring us to think about?
Well, Steve, in your book, so you've talked to these 35 people and you kind of narrowed down 5 specific leadership skills that
Yes.
you kind of found that common thread in all of your conversations. And again, I absolutely agree, you don't have to be in a position of authority to be a leader, but I think these skills apply to all of us. Could you please touch quickly on what these 5 skills are and how important it is for all of us to work on?
I'm going to get my cheat sheet out. It's because it's been a while since I've read the book. But Liz,
or wrote it, right?
or wrote it, yeah. Well, I look back at it. I started working on it in 2013, and pretty much I was done by the beginning of 2015. A foundation, I believe, is if you're a leader and you want to make a difference, believe in what you're doing. You're going to be making decisions all the time. Have confidence that you are doing something worthwhile to make this a better world as you act. Second level of leadership that I believe makes a difference for creating success is building a team around you, having a team of people who have a common belief set with what you're doing that will work, and that you don't have to supervise or micromanage, but show them the value of going with you. Third level is establishing values and sharing those values with the people around you, creating a common talking point about what we're trying to achieve and expressing those as values. Along the way, the fourth leadership behavior is helping other people, remembering always to make other people stronger and more effective in what they do. And finally, persistence. We hear that in the success leadership, success literature all the time. To be successful, you must be persistent. And I heard that as well from my respondents.
Steve, I want to talk about some of the, just kind of building up on that is, and you stress this in the book in many occasions, about how important it is to be inclusive, a collaborative type of, not only a leader, but as a person. The days of that lonely, chief executive or that leader at the top, those days are gone. How important is shared leadership, meaning that we're working collaborative with other leaders, other people, to define the success? So talk to us about that.
Well, you're absolutely right. Leadership, more than ever, is an act of interdependence. We come to whatever we're trying to achieve with our talents, our skills, but we can't do it alone. We have, I'm a fan of looking at strength finders. I can look and say, well, I like to think about things in the future. I like to learn. But, I can use help with people good at creating things, at getting things done, at executing things. And finding partners with people who match your talents and are willing to share your values can make a big difference for creating something successful.
It's very important. And you share a lot of different, as you were talking to different people, they come from different demographics, younger, older, men and women. I wanted to ask you, which is really important questions for all of us as we grow older, is to how do we groom the next generation of leaders? What do we need to do to groom the next generation?
Wow. Well, I want to introduce that by mentioning Stacy. I interviewed last year. Stacy was a dot-com millionaire, and she had created her success by the age of 20.
Mm-hmm.
She, with her brother, had created a new form of social media and had established that. And along the way, she was also a cover girl for 17 magazine. She's an attractive lady and has inspired people younger than herself to enter the field of technology and business and coding. And she's recently become I think it's called Thiel Partner. A venture capitalist, Peter Thiel, has funded her to go out and to help younger people enter the field of high technology. I think leaders who are past the age of 35, people past the age of 40, need to look to younger people and say, I've had a lot of good experiences in my life, and I have some ideas on how we work together with other people. But my experience is not everything. I know that people younger than me come to the table with new energy, with new ideas, and we have to create a bridge so that we can work together to create something that serves a large plate of humanity, a large vision of what people are interested in doing. So young and old, younger folks typically are more interested in technology. They're more interested in finding things happening quickly. Sometimes I think the older generations are more patient and more willing to give things the time to mature. And sometimes impatience is an excellent virtue in trying to create results, and we can get that from younger generations.
And
I don't know if that answered the question for you, but
no, I know. Just quickly, I know Dan wants to ask a question here, and I just quickly want to just say that sometimes I learn from the younger leaders. I learn some new things and some new ideas from those generations that is younger, vibrant, or has that vigor to learn, or the entrepreneurial spirit is there with the new millennium generation, and I'm learning a lot, so I'm open to that. So, but I think Dan's got a question for you.
Well, okay. Just tagging on that, millennials will be 50% plus of the workforce by 2020. So, that's really, really key and important that we give younger people a seat at the table and a voice. I'm not a big fan of the generational differences types of presentations that stereotypes so many people. I think in some ways that can be a disservice. But for us to recognize that, people. My dad is in just a couple of months, going to turn 95. He's a World War II veteran. We don't have many World War II veterans before. And, of course, they have a tremendous amount of wisdom that they've shared. And so there's the pushing down, I guess, of wisdom and experience. There's a lot of value in that, and I concur with what Steve was saying. The energy and the questioning and the enthusiasm of people who are younger, that's important as well. But that's always been the case. It's always been the case. So, what's different about today? I don't know if it's different. We just keep reliving this over and over again, but there certainly needs to be an awareness when it comes to leadership in business and elsewhere, that the more we collaborate from the young to the old, the better off we all are. Some have learned that lesson, and some never will.
I like what you said about creating a space at the table for the younger person's voice. I also agree. I think the large grouping of people as millennials or baby boomers and having a unified set of values, the people who are really expert at that don't lump us so closely together. But I think we need to look at each person as an individual and find their talents. And maybe there are different values that are emphasized in different generations of life based on experiences that formed us. The millennials have 9/11 as a formative experience, and that shapes everything they've seen in the future. Whereas, I grew up, with Woodstock and the assassination of President Kennedy in my background, and I can't help to think about how those key events have shaped the view I have in life going forward. I agree with you completely about treating everyone as a unique individual and finding out their talents they can bring to whatever it is you're creating.
Absolutely. When I worked at Merrill Lynch, I had an 85-year-old client that was a prolific user of Facebook. When I was updating my iPhone just a few weeks ago, there was an 88-year-old client next to me who was getting acquainted with her iWatch. All right, I don't even have that yet. So you've got that. Stereotypically, if you looked at them, you'd think, they don't have a clue what technology is. And here they were, two examples being on the cutting edge. I love technology, and just think we've got a generation now growing up who will not know what it was to not have the internet.
That's certainly true.
Very true. I don't know what it's like to have a phone, but let's talk about as we're talking about, and this is actually a good, maybe like you guys are going to do a Twitch chat about the Millennium Leadership. I think that would be great. But let's talk about that younger generation taking the leadership roles in our organizations and businesses. So there's a lot of talk about what leaders should do. But Steve, I want to ask you, if I'm this is my first role as a leader in my organization, what would be the first thing I need to focus on? Some people say vision, some people say strategy, some people say culture or values. What would be, I know it's not a cookie cutter because every business is different, but what would be really critical for someone who is stepping up to their leadership role for the first time?
Okay. Do you mean like a first-time boss
Mm-hmm.
in an organization?
Yeah, or a manager. I don't like the word boss, but
I don't either. But it gets
probably more like you're a supervisor and now you're being promoted to a manager of a department
Yeah, I like John Maxwell's model of the 5 levels of leadership, and he points out that first-time managers often get appointed to the role without having earned the right to be there. They may have been a good sales producer, they may have been punctual in their work, they may have worked long hours and shown that they have some value for the business, but they may not have demonstrated anything about working well with people. The first thing that leader needs to learn is, how do I build a team around me? How do I get a team that knows I support them? How do I get this team to support the interest of the organization? How do I show them the changes that are coming forward in the organization? And how do I earn their trust going forward? So once you achieve that, you're at the second level of leadership. The third level of leadership is when you have the team behind you and the team knows you've got their back, and then you say, here are the organizational goals we have to achieve, making those priorities of the organization important for the team and finding a way to get the team dedicated toward working on those organizational goals so that you now become a high-performance team which creates results, not in a way that micromanages, not in a way that puts people down, but with compassion, encourages people to match their work to the organizational goals. Beyond that, a person matures into becoming a better developer of people, that's level 4, and level 5, that person develops other leaders. And I see that journey from the person who's appointed, learning to build a human-oriented team, as a journey from manager to leader. I think bosses, managers, leaders, there's a continuum. Bosses are usually, we hate bosses, right? But a manager maintains a system, and a leader changes a system, makes it more effective. But you don't start out that way. You start out by earning the right to lead a team and earning the right to have the trust of a team.
Well, those are great suggestions, and you're right. It is about taking those steps, as I recall, and I think there's some people are begin at the supervisory level or a team lead. There's it's not like getting into a car that you go from 0 to 60. You actually have to pay the price. You have to go through the journey and learn as you. I think that what you're finding out, which is really interesting because we're talking about generations, is that as you grow older and mature and you're starting to notice some of these things, I'm a much better leader than I was 10, 15 years ago. But it's just a process that people have to go through as well.
It is required for us, Cal, that in order to become a better leader, we have to continue investing in our personal learning. And I know in side conversations I've had with Liz that the value of learning has been very important for her.
I think for all of us, I've yet to meet a leader who doesn't want to learn. But maybe there's some out there. But Liz, let me kind of conclude with you, maybe just a final question for Steve, as we've been gracious with time, and I appreciate his patience. But Liz, go ahead.
Steve, so I love your focus on team. Leadership isn't about the one person. It is about the team. Can you, if you had to give one tip on really building a cohesive team, what would it be?
Begin by listening and improve your skill with listening. listen not just to the words, listen to the emotional level that go with the words, listen to what this person means when they are talking. Sometimes we can confuse our listening just with details. When you are listening, listen and understand there is a person who's got this emotional dynamic going on. Says, I feel connected to this business or I feel disconnected to this business. How can I help this person improve their performance at work in a way that matches who they are?
That's a great idea. Actually, this would be a good idea for your next book, Steve. To do something with team leadership, because we are, as we talked about earlier, it's about shared leadership, and then there's some people on your team who are going to be the next generation of leaders. But one of the things that is this just kind of a quick comment is, in some of the coaching and consulting that I do, it's always the team. I have an issue with the team. How do I lead a team? How do I motivate a team, inspire a team, and those kind of things? So it's very relevant today what Liz is bringing up to the table. So thank you so much for that insight. All right. Well, we had a great show. Steve, thank you so much for coming on. Had the pleasure of having you and your wisdom, and there's a lot more into pack in this book that we've talked about, because each chapter is really very helpful. It's almost like a coaching guide, and I think that that's part of the process we all have to go through. It really is. I think if you combine the two books that you've read, and I have a younger leader in front of me, those are the two books I'll give them, and because they're just encompassing a lot of things that leaders need to know. So let me say goodbye to everybody, but let me go over and to Dan Forbes and Liz to just kind of conclude our broadcast. I think Dan has found a new toy he likes to tell you guys about. So
I don't know if I can do that on a Google Hangout.
Well, take a chance.
Hey, Steve, thank you so much. I admire the work that you're doing.
Thanks, Dan.
Just keep doing it. You're an inspiration to others. Thank you for your contribution to Lead with Giants, as we all together just try to help people become better leaders. And if anybody's listening to this, you can find these guys and so many other leaders, and you can improve your own leadership. Leadwithgiants.com. Join the community. We'd love to have you as part of us. Tal, great to be with you today. Liz, always great to see you as well. See you guys later.
Great. Yeah, you can find Dan later on a different video format. But thank you, Dan, for joining us from Austin, not too far from Dallas. So, Liz, thank you, and we appreciate you being on. How's the weather in your area?
It's beautiful, and I was so happy to be here with all three of you today. So, thanks for the opportunity.
Wow, what a great conclusion to our broadcast. So thank you guys so much. There's a lot to unpack, so just sit back, relax, watch it over the weekend, and share some of that wisdom with the people that you're trying to lead. So thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Tal.